Vice Chair of Ways and Means. I'm joined with my colleagues, Councilor Anissa Sabi-George, as well as Councilor Matt O'Malley. I want to remind you that this public hearing is being recorded and broadcast on Comcast 8, RCN 82, Verizon 1964, and streamed on the City of Boston webpage. Please silence your cell phones and other devices. We'll take public testimony at the end of the hearing and appreciate if you would sign in over to my left if you'd like to testify at the end of the hearing. And when you do testify, please state your name, your affiliation, your residence, and limit your comments to a couple minutes. You can also submit written testimony to the City of Boston website. Today's hearings are docket number 1658, message order approving supplemental appropriation of $1,013,755 to cover the FY19 costs items contained within the collective bargaining agreements between Boston School Committee and SEIU, Local 888. Docket number 1659, a message in order to reduce the FY19 appropriation for the reserve collective bargaining by $1,013,755 to provide funding for BPS for the FY19 cost contained within the collective bargaining agreement for the Boston School Committee, SEIU, Local 888 Administrative Guide. Docket number 1660, message in order approving supplemental appropriation for the Boston Public Health Commission and the City Housing Trust for FY19 in the amount of $280,229 to cover FY19 cost items for the Boston Public Health Commission and Local 888. And docket number 1661, message in order to reduce the appropriation for the reserve collective bargaining by $280,000 to provide funding to the Boston Public Health and City Housing Trust Fund for the FY19 increases contained within the collective bargaining agreement for the Public Health Commission as well as Local 888. Today we are joined by Justin Sterrett, the Budget Director, David Suchich, the Chief Labor and Employment Counsel for Boston Public Health Commission, as well as Susan D'Amato, Labor Counsel for Boston Public Schools. So I will turn it over to Justin. I know that, Justin, you have a time commitment at 1 as we ran late for the first hearing, so when you need to scoot, you certainly may scoot.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Councillor. Good afternoon. Thank you, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Sabi-George, and Councillor O'Malley for inviting us here to testify today. As you mentioned, my name is Justin Sterrett, and I'm the Budget Director for the City of Boston. I'm here to offer testimony on two dockets before you and the appropriations that they reflect. Dockets 1658 through 1661 are appropriation orders that cover the FY19 costs of the collective bargaining agreements between PHC and SEIU programs for $280,000 and between the Boston School Committee and SEIU Administrative Guild for about $1 million. As you remember, the FY19 budget passed by the Council included $38.4 million in aggregate to cover the collective bargaining reserves. So far in FY19, these are the 7th and 8th collective bargaining agreement appropriations. The City Council has previously passed appropriations for Teamsters, Park Rangers, Municipal Police Patrolmen and Superiors, and BPS storekeepers. With the approval of these supplementals, the remaining balance in FY19 collective bargaining reserve will be $36.2 million. With the completion of these contracts, the city will have settled agreements with 76% of unions. That's when combining PHC and BPS along with the city. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues at PHC and the schools to answer any questions about the specific contracts, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the appropriations or the overall funding levels.
Thank you very much, Justin. Just a couple, the number of individuals in the bargaining unit?
So I'll let them both speak about that.
Good afternoon. My name is Dave Sussick from the Boston Public Health Commission. There's approximately 170 employees in the SEIU Local 888 Programs Bargaining Unit. That's with docket number 160 to 161.
And for Susan D'Amato, Labor Counsel for Boston Public Schools, for the Guild, Local 888 Administrative Guild members are approximately 275.
Okay. And the duration of the contracts?
We at BPS did a 1 year, 16-17, and then a 3 year, 17 to 2020.
That's the same at the Health Commission, so the contract would contracts would cover the period October 1st, 2016 through September 30th, 2020.
Okay. Can you review any elimination of previous contractual entitlements that new hires had, like use of personal time during the first year, things like that?
Yeah, so we made a change to that contract. First, I'll say that at the Health Commission, we have 4 separate collective bargaining agreements with SEIU Local 88. So the programs unit is the 4th unit to settle the other 3 reached agreement earlier in the year. In all of those contracts, we amended the language that said that the personal leave entitlements that's in the contract, we didn't increase it or decrease it. We just made it eligible to people as of January 1st after they're hired.
That is similar at the BPS, yes.
Okay. I'd like to make note that we've been joined by City Councilor Ed Flynn. Councilor Anissa Sabi-George.
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Could you just briefly sort of get into the percentage breakdown? I know you touched upon this a little bit. Total costs, career awards, stuff like that, sort of the top lines.
I'd say overall in both contracts, it's 2% wage increases, which is consistent with the pattern seen by most, if not every other union that we've been negotiating with. I'll let both parties talk about some of the other compensation-related changes that were made in the contracts.
Sure. So for the Guild at the Boston Public Schools, in addition to the 2%, we also created 2 new steps. We have a lot of long-term employees that were stuck at the top step for a long time, so we thought it was in our best interest to retain that those good workers to create 2 additional steps, each at 1%. We also increased career awards. I know you specifically asked about that, Councilor O'Malley, by $300 across the board. The last time the career awards were increased for this group was back in 2007. So this was a good win for us as well, and the members of that group. We expanded the tuition reimbursement to include certificate programs as well as the college credit programs that we allow now. That is something that the membership really pushed for, and again, that's also an advantage to the administration to have an educated workforce. If it's certificates or college credit, it's education is education. We also, another big ask on both sides was the evaluation process, the specific evaluation. The membership had been asking for us to update it for more accountability, and we were able to agree to a massive overhaul of their yearly evaluation form.
And it also gives a little, if I have it correct, a little more leeway to school leaders in terms of the staffing and hiring process.
That is one of the most important things, and that's last on my list, probably
sorry.
should have been first, is in staffing and hiring. That was a major sticking point, but both sides are very happy with the result. The Guild at BPS is heavily reliant on seniority, which is wonderful to promote from within. But the greatest request that we hear from school leaders is autonomy in hiring, in staffing. So we were able to work massive changes from our perspective into Article 4, which governs staffing and hiring, and it allows us to go to external candidates in some scenarios where previously we were not able to do that. It was very difficult for an external candidate to be welcomed into the Guild, into a Guild position. So now that with our changes, it'll be more easy. It'll be easier for school leaders to view all types of candidates been there for a long time, and also externals.
Great. And these primarily are clerical, administrative assistant type positions?
It's clerical, secretarial, and some technical workers. We have some Guild within our OIT department. Some of our Guild works in the budget and the finance side of the house, but primarily it's clerical and secretarial.
So this would be both within the schools and within the bowling building?
That's correct. So centrally based and school-based as well.
Perfect, thank you very
Yes.
much. And then at BPH?
Sure. So the settlement, as indicated, generally aligns with the prior settlements with the Health Commission had with SEIU Local 888. The agreement includes new provisions that will enhance the Commission's ability to staff, train, and conduct other administrative processes more efficiently. Parties also agreed to a reasonable suspicion drug testing policy that will be developed in the coming year or so.
And does public schools have any drug testing, or is that already established, or is that?
What we have is established was not touched at this
Perfect,
during this
okay,
contract.
great, thank you, sorry to cut you off.
Sure. The parties also revised the qualifications and scope of work and wage classifications of a small number of clinical and administrative positions. That was done to enhance the Commission's ability to provide clinical services to patients, particularly those with acute clinical needs. It also preserved and it puts us in a position to expand our ability to bill for the services, the clinical services that are provided. And also allows us, we think, to be in a better position to recruit and retain employees, particularly employees with clinical degrees. For the compensation, in addition to the 2% increases which take place annually in January, there was a new step created for on the wage scale that the most senior employees are eligible for. The parties also created a new training and education fund starting July 1st, 2019, that provides, we're happy to provide more support for voluntary professional development and continuing education to the members of this bargaining unit. We also increased the employer's contribution to this SEIU Local 88 Housing Trust Fund, so it aligns with what is currently being paid by the City of Boston, and also covered these employees by our paid parental leave policy.
That's great. And the positions are a little bit more diverse than, say, Boston Public Schools, I assume? It's got more caseworkers and, or you tell me, what positions?
Yeah, that's correct. It is
Yeah.
a fairly diverse group in terms of the amount of work they
Yeah.
do. It's a mix of clinical administrative positions. It's also a mix of supervisory and non-supervisory positions. They work in 4 different bureaus within the Health Commission: Recovery Services, Infectious Disease, Community Initiatives, and Child, Adolescent, and Family Health.
Okay, good. And the total cost is just under $1 million, about $960,000? Is that correct?
So that's the
For the Public Health Commission?
The Public Health Commission, the FY19 cost is about $280,000. For the schools, it's about $1.013 million.
So that's, is that just that the school administrators are?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're referring to the cost over the 4 years. Yeah,
4-year
that's
cost.
just shy of $960,000.
$960,000. So that would work out, 960 divided by 170 is about 5,600, whereas BPS 275 divided by 3.4 million divided by 275, which is the total cost, would be about 12.3. Is that, so it seems a little inconsistent. Is that just because the base pay for public school employees is higher?
If I had to venture to guess, I would say so. The cost of 2% on the salaries at PhD was much lower than the cost for the 2% for the BPS employees.
Okay, great. Okay, well, listen, I can't thank you guys enough for your great work. It is, I've been here a while now, and to get to a collectively bargained agreement where both sides are treated with dignity and respect, and you can find that common ground, and both sides give and gain, the city gains after that. So it's appreciate all your hard work on this, and to the union leaders as well who aren't with us or who we will hear from later. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councilor O'Malley. Maybe you guys can head over to National Grid. We can take care of that as well. I would like to recognize that we've been joined by Councilor Frank Baker. Councilor Ed Flynn.
Thank you, Councilor. And I just had a question for Justin. I know you highlighted some drug testing protocol. As you go forward in budget negotiations, what is the city thinking of as marijuana becomes legal? Are you testing for it? And when people do test positive for it, what would the outcome be?
That is a fantastic question, and not one that I sort of have the expertise to answer. I would say, generally speaking, it's the law of the land now, so I think that that's definitely something we're going to have to take a look at. But at the same time, there are obviously collective bargaining agreements that preceded some of the changes in the marijuana laws that we'd have to probably take a case-by-case look at based on the agreements that are in place right now. But I don't know if David or Susan have better answers on the specifics for these two unions, though.
I'd only say that, you know, the policy that we rolled into this contract or negotiated as part of this contract is not something that's going to take place immediately. We have to put that in place. But for this drug testing policy, it calls for reasonable suspicion and post-accident testing. So we're not doing annual or random testing as a general matter. These testing is brought on by cause, essentially. And so it remains our policy, whether or not marijuana is legal or not, that people shouldn't be under the influence of it when they're at work doing these duties. And that's really what the focus of the policies are.
When I served in the military, for 25 years, I had random drug testing for almost my entire life, but I do know that marijuana would stay in someone's system for well over 30 days. So you could be using marijuana several weeks before the test and still come up positive. My point is, we probably need to look at this in a committee fashion, come up with ideas, solutions, frequently asked questions, because I anticipate we're going to get this issue sooner rather than later, and it's better to come up with a plan now than when someone does test positive. We do have an idea of what a roadmap could be.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take that back and speak with our labor and our HR folks on the city side and see if we can start to get some answers around that.
So if someone does test positive now for marijuana, what would the sanction be?
Well, I'll say on the BPS side, still illegal in schools, marijuana. So we do not, we look at it similarly to PHC, though. We certainly question someone's fitness for duty, certainly school-based when you're working with children. We get those calls, unfortunately, every now and then in the Labor Department of someone whose fitness for duty is questioned, and we will immediately put that person on admin leave and address it as a disciplinary matter or perhaps a medical matter. Certainly we recognize the law that medical marijuana is here and people have a right to that. But in terms of in the schools, we have our internal policies, and we make sure that we, especially those in touch with the children, we will discipline someone who we believe is under the influence.
What can you tell me about the employee assistance program for both departments? If someone is using illegal drugs, they have a problem, what type of assistance could you provide them before they even, test positive? They voluntarily come forward, they have a problem. Is there any type of assistance that you could provide them?
So we at BPS, we monitor attendance very closely, and we see a correlation sometimes between attendance and drug use. And so we require attendance meetings. We don't call them disciplinary. And at the attendance meetings, we always remind employees that we do have an employee assistance program. We have an FMLA. We at BPS have an Office of Equity that works with employees who need accommodations. And certainly we do like when somebody self-reports, then we know, this is a medical condition, but we do require employees to work with EAP or the Office of Equity in order for us so we're all on the same page in terms of not violating anybody's rights, but also protecting especially the children. But the EAP, we're pretty good about recommending that to people and reminding people that we have it.
And they wouldn't be penalized if they did go before you with the alcohol or drug problems seeking assistance, they would not be penalized?
No, we don't, the first time, that's why we call it an attendance meeting, or we call for a fit for duty letter. And with the fit for duty letter, we ask people to bring their job descriptions to their doctors. We ask the doctors to weigh in on if this person is on medical marijuana, are they able to do their job? Are they safe to be interacting with children? We don't treat that as a disciplinary matter. That is more of as a personnel matter. The disciplinary part comes later if we have asked you to do something specifically and maybe it becomes an insubordination matter. But we certainly don't treat medical conditions as a disciplinary matter to start.
Okay. And I guess one final question. What type of accommodations do you have for people with disabilities that work in your departments? Are there any type of medical assistance programs that you might offer? It might be extra days in terms of allowing them to go to their medical appointments. Is there any type of extra consideration that you might provide someone with disabilities?
So we certainly at BPS, I mentioned the Office of Equity, that also we encourage people to have dialogues with equity in terms of accommodations. We certainly encourage intermittent FMLA. If somebody does have a weekly doctor's appointment, we don't want to punish that person for being absent for that day, and we don't. If they've had an interactive dialogue with the Office of Equity and it has been recorded with OHC, with the leaves team, even if you're out of sick time, we don't hold that absence against you if we know that you are at a medical appointment.
Thank you, and thank you, Council McCarthy, for giving me the opportunity to ask some questions.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Frank Baker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. So we're talking about the Guild in SEIU. Guild works in the school department,
Yes.
and then the SEIU that we're talking about works in public health.
They're both SEIU. One is programs and one is guild.
And everybody's at the school department.
No, I'm sorry. So the SEIU guild is at BPS and the
Okay.
SEIU programs unit is at PHC.
Okay, what do your people at the public health do? And I'm sorry if this was already covered. I'll be quick, I promise.
So this particular unit is pretty broad in terms of the scope of work. They could be assigned to any of 4 of our bureaus. Recovery services, that's a mix of people doing outreach, doing clinical work. There's the people who run the engagement center on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
We have people in Community Initiatives Bureau, in the Infectious Disease Bureau, and also in the Child, Adolescent, and Family Health Bureau. So whatever, broad spectrum of programs those bureaus are handling, that's where these people will work.
Okay, do we have, is there anything in either one of the contracts, I guess we're talking about both of them together, either one of the contracts that's professional development? Do we have any professional development for your group and what are they?
We do at BPS in this guild contract. It's not new. We've
Okay.
always offered it to them. And we have the tuition reimbursement that we just expanded to certification programs, but we also set aside money for professional development with this group.
And the professional development specifically for what their area that they work in, or?
Yes, so to answer your first question, at the school department, the guild is primarily clerical, secretarial, and some technical workers. So we have some workers in our OIT department, some workers in the finance and the budget side of things, but primarily clerical and secretarial.
So if they wanted job development, it would have to be within that scope?
We do ask for that, yes. We'd like for you to grow within your job. We certainly, City Hall offers a lot of trainings that are offered to BPS employees as well. And like I said, this is new to this contract, that we allowed tuition reimbursement for certification programs, which their membership really pushed for, and we were happy to give.
And that was new in this contract?
That is new to this contract, yes, sir.
Is there any language in there that the bargaining unit may not be happy with? Like, is there any new language that, say, you guys are going after that is a change? that I may hear about? And I mean, I haven't heard anything.
The only thing that I would suggest is, and I mentioned this to the chairman, was the staffing and hiring. It was actually Councilor O'Malley, I believe. The staffing and the hiring was the final sticking point to pulling everything together. But we each gave a little on both sides, exactly as a negotiation should go. You know, I sat at the table, and we were both happy with the result.
Were you the lead negotiator for the city?
Actually, Zach Scott from the Office of Human Capital took the lead, and so I'm just one of the labor attorneys.
Through BPS?
Through BPS, correct.
And does BPS sit with labor relations? So is there a representative from labor relations here and also BPS labor relations, or you guys handle that on your
No,
own?
at the table, it was, I also had Dave Murphy as another labor attorney at BPS at the time, and he and I sat at the table with Zach Scott. We, as a finality, we do run things through Emery Noonan upstairs.
Yeah.
But
But you
know,
guys handle the negotiation?
Correct.
Okay, and how does it work over at BPHC?
Right, so the Health Commission.
Well, first, let's go back.
Yeah.
Professional development, do you have language in there for this bargaining unit? And also, what is it spent on?
Right, so for this bargaining unit, that language is new. It's
Okay.
going into the contract for the first time. It'll take effect at the start of the next fiscal year, which is July 1st, 2019. You can use the funds both for standard tuition reimbursement for higher education outside of work. You can also use the funds for conferences that relate to work.
So travel also with that? Like, so if there's a conference in New York,
No,
would an
not
employee
out
be
of
able
this,
to-
not out-of-state travel, no, but conference fees, oftentimes there's a registration fee, even if it's a webinar, you sometimes have to pay for the course materials,
Yeah.
parking and things like that would be covered by it, but not out-of-state travel.
So do you guys do certificates also? Like the way BPHC, they're paying for certificate programs now also, are you guys paying for those also?
We'd have to
Because I would think maybe a lot of the people that are working in the recovery field, it's a lot of certifications, I would think.
So a number of the clinicians have continuing education credits that they need to take courses for, so they could use the time off and the funds to go to those types of conferences. In terms of the scope, you asked about that earlier. We are really, this is for voluntary professional development of employees, so we're supporting it if it relates to public health, which is pretty broad. It doesn't necessarily have to be skill building in what you do for us now.
Right, okay, because it's more of a wider array. And is there anything in here for, I think it's AFSCME that has the money that's set aside for purchasing homes? You guys do any of these?
The housing trust?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So for the Health Commission, SEIU has its own housing trust fund. We agreed to increase the contribution to the trust fund so it aligns with, I think, what the city is currently paying.
So your contribution is a once-a-year contribution, or just when this contract was signed, you put something in there?
No, it's monthly. We make
Monthly.
contributions monthly. What we changed is the rate.
Okay, and what was it, and what did it go up to?
So it's 5 cents an employee per hour worked, and that's defined in a particular way in the agreement, and it's now gone up to 10 cents per employee per hour worked.
So every employee is 70 cents a day going into this housing trust? 10 cents an hour, seven hour?
I guess that's right if they worked one regular shift, yep.
So what does that look like? What's a monthly payment? And if you do know what is in their housing trust now?
So I'd have to kind of get back to you on both of those
Okay.
those things, because it's based on people and hours.
Yeah.
So if somebody worked overtime, we have to make a contribution on that. So I'd have to get back to you on the financial data.
And do you know, this is probably more of a union, I don't know if the union's coming in after this, but do you know what people, like what type of help do they get? Is it $5,000 towards a down payment? Do you have any sense of what the benefit is?
I'd have to get you some more information on
Okay.
that, other than because those benefits can change and they're set by the trustees on the fund.
Okay,
So
thank
what
you.
they are right now, I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. And to echo what Councilor O'Malley had to say, we went for a long time in the city where no contracts were just handled. Every one of them was 3 years out, 4 years out, and I used to negotiate for my bargaining committee back then when it wasn't unheard of to get 0, 0, 0 across the board. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just for the record, we were joined by City Council President Andrea Campbell, but she just scooted out. So if there's anybody who'd like to speak in public, testify, I don't believe there is. So that will pretty much wrap it up for docket number 1658, 1659, 1660, and 1661. I'll be eager to report this out in the positive as soon as it's written up. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you.